so excited to talk with Dax right now. And once again, yeah, as we get into this conversation, please include any questions, thoughts in the comments, and we'll also open it up for discussion. You know, we're on video chat, so you have the opening to either go on video and audio or just leave it in the chat, whatever you feel comfortable with. Well, Dax Dasilva, coming all the way from Montreal over Zoom. Thank you so much for being here.
Yeah, pleasure, Shira. Great to chat with you today.
Dax is the founder and CEO of Lightspeed, also the author of this book, Age of Union, Igniting the Changemaker, which I've been which I've been fortunate enough to discuss a lot with you over the years. So as you were promoting the book last year, so it's so great to reconnect again during this time.
Yeah, Shira, you were my partner in the launch of this in LA and in Montreal. So you're a big part of the story of the book. And now it's actually during quarantine. Now it's a free ebook. So did really well with the physical copies and the art book version, but now it's available to anybody free.
Yeah, let's put that in the link. If someone wants to put that in the chat, the ebook is right now free. It's available to, you know, I guess it's it's not an audiobook. You could read it.
Well, the audiobook's on its way. We recorded it a couple, months ago. Because of COVID, there's been a delay in the approval, but yeah, it'll be a free audiobook too. It's just a good time to pause and reflect right now. And so just getting this book out free as whoever wants it. We've had thousands of downloads. It's been great conversations along the way.
That's amazing. So just for some people who might not know you, I want to just create a bit of context.
Sure.
So just share a bit about, you are the founder of Lightspeed, how that began, and I guess, just a bit of introduction of who you are so people understand, because I want to get into mindful entrepreneurship and kind of bring people on that journey of how you started bringing in more of your own spiritual journey and these conscious tools into your work.
So Lightspeed is a tech company based in Montreal, but we have 1,000+ employees all around the world in Canada, the US, Europe, and Australia. We do software in the cloud for independent businesses. So those local businesses that we love in retail and in hospitality. And we work with the businesses with a bit more complexity. So we have deeper tools for running a business, whether it's like the point of sale or managing all the operations. So that's been a 15-year journey. And last year it sort of had another big milestone where we went public, on the Toronto Stock Exchange. That's gone great. But yeah, so 7 years of bootstrapping the company with no outside investors. And then the next 7 years was, $300 million worth of venture capital money invested in the business, and we grew and we acquired companies and grew the teams all over the world. And then the last year has just been this new journey of being a public company. And so lots of changes, lots of different seasons and different stages, and lots of learnings, lots of failures, lots of things to celebrate as well. So that's been an amazing journey, and a business journey, but also at the same time, as you can read in Age of Union, also a spiritual journey at the same time.
Yeah, I want to get into that, because a lot of people might think it's an either or, and when you're going down that path of running a startup that is scaling and building at a crazy speed, a lot of times people will forget about that side of things, right? Their spiritual side, and working on themselves and self-care and self-love and all that. I guess, when did you start integrating that into your life, and what triggered that?
So I think it's a big reason why the book, because when I'm doing mentoring, and I do lots of mentoring for people that are doing startups, but also people that are doing nonprofits, because I also have an arts and culture nonprofit called Never Apart. It's an art center. So I have a lot of folks that are in culture or the nonprofit space that I speak to for mentoring, and whether it's or entrepreneurs that are doing the things that Lightspeed helps entrepreneurs with, retail or restaurants. Whenever I'm doing any of these mentoring sessions, I feel like if I'm giving them the business side of the advice, I'm almost not giving them the full story of what it took for me. And what it took for me was A business journey, certainly, but at the same time, I had a spiritual journey that started around the same time as Lightspeed started. So in 2005, and of course, everybody's spiritual journey is going to be different. But after studying at UBC, University of British Columbia, I moved from computer science, art history, and religious studies, and I discovered a real connection to Judaism. And so my conversion and my deepening of that learning started around the same time as Lightspeed started. And so it gave me a real foundation that grew and grew as the business grew. And I really needed that foundation when times got tough, or we were at decision points, or when it's as important to have that foundation and have that wind behind you when you're celebrating as when you're in the lows, right? And so I feel like what the book says to some degree is recommends you go on a journey, no matter what that is for you.
Yeah.
It's going to vary for every person, but seek that out, because that's we focus a lot on what some of the material things are, or building ourselves, but we don't build the other side, which is the soul. And you really need both of those things healthy and working together, the body and the soul, the self and the soul, in order to be a perfect instrument and to really properly have everything in harmony and be your authentic self in all the projects that you are, and have your full flame and your full light applied to those projects. And so if you're only sort of focusing on the one side, then you get the very reactive, the very anxiety ridden. That's the self.
Snapping at people. I mean, during stress and pressure with teams, I'm sure snapping.
And that's because we haven't nourished the soul. And we haven't sort of developed that flame, on the other side that helps both things work in concert.
But at what point did you go from like this being your own personal kind of experience and journey that you're taking, and then integrating it into your work? Because I feel like from my experience and my own journey, at first it starts as separate, right? You have your work life, and then you have this other life, and then you kind of start realizing you need to integrate, or else it's not going to be authentic. So did you have any conflicts in integrating it, and like how were you able to bridge that gap?
Well, I think you and your spirituality is your authentic person, right? And so how you interact with other people, how you what you model as an example, especially as a leader in a project, that comes out in how you operate, and hopefully is mirrored through your organization by example. And so I never explicitly spoke about spirituality until the book came out, and I did a Q&A with whoever was interested, and everybody at the company who wanted a book got a book. But people were interested to find out my own spiritual journey, because everybody has an interest in sort of maybe where some of the values of the company come from, and I think that some of those values are rooted in the things that I've learned along the way, and that the company has learned along the way, and everything sort of has developed in concert.
Yeah, that's really interesting. And I know that you've converted to Judaism, which is interesting, because I was born Jewish, and yet I think you're always kind of then testing the waters of what else is out there from what you were kind of given, right?
Mm-hmm, for sure.
Just like that's an interesting thing that happens. And I joke around that now I'm like learning to be a Jew boo, like Jewish.
Well, I grew up Catholic, and I didn't really leave one thing to go into another thing. I just integrated new things and expanded my I found one thing helped me uncover, unconceal and reveal things that I hadn't yet, that were really that I found were it was like planting seeds, and they were blooming. So something different is going to work for every person, and I found such richness in that tradition, and especially the mystical tradition, that that for me it's been now a almost 20-year journey of going deeper and finding new things continuously.
Yeah. And how do you extend your learnings and spiritual lessons to your company and employees, or do you? Like how?
I think it's by example. I mean, and I think it's by setting values and behaviors and you know, of course, you know, the initial team at the company was all from the, you know, the LGBTQ community, including myself. And so as we grew, these ideas about the value and the strength that diversity and inclusion can bring to a company, that's a very big part of my personal spirituality. You'll find a lot of discussion about union in Age of Union, but how do you get union out of the strength of diversity? So you find a lot of what's great about the company, is what I find great about what I've discovered in my spiritual journey.
Yeah, I think that is really interesting and something to take note of, because like you've built different communities out of this app. You know, obviously Lightspeed became a success, and then it seems like, and it went public, but you had all these, like, now you're building Never Apart, and you obviously
Yeah.
did the book, and it was like very clear that you needed to express who you really were through these mediums versus necessarily maybe you kind of grew beyond personally from having the company. That wasn't just all of your identity. Is that true?
Yeah, well, you know, if you look at the book, there's like four pillars, right? There's leadership, there's culture, there's spirituality, and there's nature. And I really do think that for me, and maybe many people will relate to those pillars, that those are like the four pillars that you need in order to be a change maker, in order to make impact in the unique way that each person can make impact. And if I look at my projects, which are, you know, Lightspeed, this tech company, Never Apart, and Arts and Culture Center, and Age of Union, which is, you know, talks about all of the pillars, but is focused a lot on the environment and on spirituality. You know, Lightspeed really exemplifies leadership and culture, and Never Apart is like, what is the beauty of human expression that can help build bridges between people that are different, and create new solutions and new behaviors that are healthier, you know, for society. And then the Age of Union project is bringing in spirituality in a more explicit way, and bringing in, you know, ultimately, how do we use the first three to save nature, you know? And so I found sort of a continuity, but different projects will express different things. You know, I wouldn't be able to get out of Lightspeed what I would get out of, you know, an art opening that we do seasonally at Never Apart, and I wouldn't get out of Never Apart what I'm able to do with an Age of Union discussion around, let's say, conservation, or a talk about spirituality, right? Because
I think that's so important, because we all want this, like, sorry, this is my housemate I'm staying with, and her dog's here too. I think that's really key, because I think we want this be all end all solution for all our passions, and we put a lot of pressure on ourselves. And then if one thing doesn't encompass everything or encapsulate everything, we get disappointed with ourselves, and we get disappointed with the experience. But I think if we can see that we can have many things in our life, many expressions and projects, and each might fulfill one thing versus one thing being everything, I think it would bring us a lot more peace.
So here's something that I'd like to remind people. Like, first of all, projects are projects, and many will come and go through your life, and you, it's unhealthy, I think, to put all of your whole self is never going to be expressed in one particular project, you know. And I think that younger people, especially when, or people of all ages, but younger people especially, feel like, you know, they aren't making the impact they want to, or they're not, you know, they're not able to express all the parts of themselves that they want to at this moment. And that's why I put right near the beginning of the book, in the leadership section, something called Life's Journey, which is, you know, in your 20s and in your 30s, you're building your world. In your 40s, it's a different time where you're able to, and I found, you know, where you're able to, you know, look back and able to do things with more understanding. And then there's different stages where you plant seeds. And I could see Never Apart, the seeds for that being planted at the beginnings, before Lightspeed, but that project wasn't ready to be done until 10 years into Lightspeed. I had to learn from 10 years of Lightspeed in order to open that art center. And I had to do 15 years of Lightspeed and 5 years of Never Apart in order to write Age of Union. But the seeds of those things were planted along the way. And I think what we've forgotten is that we have to have patience, which is like something not so cool in this world. And you know, it's something that we forget, but patience and planting those seeds and nurturing and watering those seeds, and then building yourself as an instrument. body and soul, building yourself as an instrument that can bring light to those seeds, that can be that flame that sort of lets those things really develop. That's really your aim. So place less importance on the projects and place more emphasis on being the best instrument and allowing those projects to all be authentic to you. And then you'll have many that come into your life and that will be able to fulfill you and bring, something to the greater as you're doing them.
Yeah, I love that.
Dax.
Jordana had a question.
Yeah, I love also just like hearing you talk about planting these seeds, because we talk about that a lot, on Peace Inside, and really, when we have conversations about karma, is that if you like the world that you live in now, then plant more of those seeds. And if you don't like the world that you live in now, plant more of the seeds that you want to see. And so that's how we can see all, our gardens bloom with all of that.
I love that.
I'm curious about, you developed yourself spiritually over the last 20 years and really coming into who you are. And that's really helped you in your business. Do you think that people need to develop themselves spiritually before they have success in business or their career?
Well, I think that there are many people that are successful in business that don't appear to be extremely spiritual, or at least spiritual in the way that we would perceive them to be compassionate or to be mindful of their impact to the natural world, to other species. So I think that you can be a business person that doesn't take into account many spiritual sort of tenets and be successful. But I think that the goal is to be, I think, a business person that is not just creating for the short term, but is building something that's not just business success, but that's building something that's meaningful, right? And it's building something that's infused with purpose. And then that, I think, takes a spiritual journey concurrent with the business journey, concurrent with the entrepreneurial journey. And I think that's ultimately if you build something and you build a lot of material success, and at the end of it, you find yourself empty and find that it wasn't fulfilling. I think that's probably was the missing ingredient, that there wasn't that spiritual adventure at the same time, which is actually a thrilling part of building something. And actually,
taking it as lessons and developing yourself spiritually along with the business. I really can feel that. And I guess that it depends on what your definition of success is, right? That if your definition of success is only material success, you might have that, but then at some point in time, you're likely going to wake up and see that was not fulfilling for you.
Yeah, and sometimes you will never really know the impact of what you do. You were speaking earlier, Jordana, about planting seeds. When you think about change makers, many of, like, for example, the work that you guys are doing here, being able to inspire individuals that will, be inspired to do better for the world and be change makers themselves and be impactful. You'll never know the full impact of that. You'll never know where those seeds will blossom. I'll never know sort of who picks up the book and does something for the positive. And so sometimes it can't always be measured, and sometimes you'll never know. And that's a little bit of faith, and that's a little bit of planting those seeds with that pure intention, knowing that you will never know, but that it came from a pure place, and that from that pure intention will spring beauty, right? And positivity and good.
And do you feel like it's also checking your ego? Because like we all, like, with you run a public company, it's based on results, like that balance between intention and like knowing your impact, and then being like, there's numbers connected to things. I find that's a big conflict for me. And like, at the same time, I love these tools and practices. Doesn't mean I need to alienate myself from the world and just do these things. Like, I think it's about integrating both sides, and we all have our own purpose in terms of how we do that and our own journey.
we're such a metrics driven and numbers driven society, you know, like we look at our followers, we look at our business success in terms of revenue, we look at leads in marketing, we look in like all sorts of, you know, sorts of numbers that we see in our businesses. And, you know, all of that is important when it comes to being able to measure whether you're on the right track.
Yeah.
And I think that's essential. But I think that at the same time, you can't lose sight of, you know, what is the bigger thing that you're trying to do? You know, what is the greater thing, the bigger aim, and is that connected? Is that authentic to what you're trying to put out in the world?
Yeah. Because I'm assuming there's probably, it is challenging, and like getting people, how do you deal with getting people either, I guess you can't get people on board your perspective, but like kind of acknowledge the fact that we're all different, and like you might deal with people that aren't spiritual, but you still need to work with them. How do you balance that out and reconcile that?
Yeah, I forgot an earlier point when you were talking about ego. And actually, I think and it came back to me now.
No,
I think the one thing that's really interesting about ego, and there's always this discussion about, you know, you need to remove the ego in order to make progress, or in order to make spiritual progress. So I think that comes back to, and it's a really interesting discussion. So I think that it comes back to the body and the soul, the self and the soul, right? We're in the age of the selfie. So it feels good to have your ego stroked, right? And it feels good to have a strong sense of self. And a strong sense of self is really important, because if you're not confident, then you're not going to be able to do the things that your soul wants you to be able to do, right? However, if you think about yourself as a totality, if it's filled with ego and there's no room, then you have nowhere to, there's no listening happening. There's no receiving happening. So if you clear space and you allow your ego to be the half of what it's supposed to be, then you have room to receive. You have room to listen. You have room to learn. You have room to grow. You have space to nourish that soul into a flame and into a fire, right? And that's super important. It's not that the ego is bad. You need to have confidence. You need to have a strong sense of who you are. You need to be able to stand your ground, but you need to also leave space to listen and to receive and to learn.
Yeah, it's a very fine balance. And I think all of us are trying to figure out. It's true when everything is measured around numbers, but our numbers mean nothing if we don't understand why we're doing it, right? Yeah. Right. And then it's just like a constant, you're running after things you can't even grasp, and it's everything that's outside of you. So I do think it's an interesting balance.
I think you can get lost in the numbers too, right? And fixated, because it's just, you know, it's something to, you know, that you're tracking all the time.
Yeah. What was the inspiration? You talked a bit, obviously, about Age of Union. What was the inspiration behind writing it, and what's the takeaway?
Yeah, so I think the inspiration, so what I noticed is, you know, as I was doing all these mentoring sessions with artists, entrepreneurs, you know, tech folks, is that the conversations, even though one was, you know, at a gallery and one was at a tech company, they seemed to have a common thread, or whether it was people that were starting a nonprofit or some sort of, you know, for good sort of project. They were all change makers. They were all leaders. They were all voices in their own way. And what I wanted to do with the book was share a toolkit for the change maker. How do I ignite the change maker? Because in a world that's got so many challenges, no one person can do it alone. I'm going to do what my talents allow me to do. You are going to be able to apply your own way. And we need 8 billion change makers, not 8 billion people thinking as individuals. Because we have the world right now of 8 billion people thinking of themselves as individuals, and that's not how we're going to create what we need next, you know. And so that was like the motivation, is how do you, and I don't know, it's limitless what each individual person can do. You can do multiple projects. You have amazing people like Jane Goodall, who single-handedly are saving entire ecosystems and species. Like individuals can do incredible things. And so igniting letting people realize that they can each be leaders in their own way was really sort of the motivation, and to actually, give change makers a bit of a toolkit, but one that's got leadership, which I think is like, how can we each be change maker in our own way? Culture, which is like the beauty of humanity. It's all our expressions, our identities, our behaviors. Spirituality, which is the interconnectedness of all things, which is something that I think is a very difficult thing to talk about, especially when I bring this topic up in tech circles. It's like nobody's ever talked about this in a tech circle, and actually people really, really love to hear about it. And then finally, nature. It's like the foundation for all of those things, and it's where we need to apply our energy next.
Yeah, and you're vegan, of course, or vegetarian, or some,
yeah,
like yeah. I mean, you don't eat meat, which I just think that I navigate that. But I think that's also, you talk about in the book, of course, about that. But I think it's interesting. Why do you think tech circles don't want to talk about spirituality? And
actually, they actually do.
How can we encourage? Yeah. So how can we encourage those conversations? And I mean, I think a lot of people in tech go to Burning Man, so obviously they're wanting to experience something.
My experience of the book tour is like, we did the book tour in Canada, in the US, and Europe, and in Israel as well. And after each book talk, and even if I mentioned just spirituality in brief passing, that's all people, when I was signing books and talking about it, that's all people wanted to talk about was spirituality. And I think that there's such a hunger for it, and such a lack of a modern conversation around it, that people really want to hear people talk about this in a modern way, in a way that's connected to, in a way that's practical, in a way that's actionable. And that's why sort of at the end of the book, there's 40 acts of union. So I don't just drop a whole bunch of philosophy on you and then just like leave you to think about it. There's like 40 practical things that you can start to do, and they're sort of in different categories. And so that's like, I think that's the other point, the other big point of the book, which is like, change begins with your choices, and every daily act can be an act of elevation. And that comes from Judaism, actually. It's like the idea of the mitzvah. So you take something physical and you imbue it with intention, and that elevates the act. Even if it's a simple act of eating, or a simple act of choosing a container, or a simple act of choosing a mode of transport, or how you treat another person or an animal, and so that's the very practical thing where, don't get lost in spirituality. Don't get lost with too much things that are unnecessarily confusing about spirituality, when it can be so beautifully practical and daily, and a part of the mundane. And therefore you can get meaning and purpose all day long, because the things that you do on an hour-to-hour basis have meaning, because you put meaning into them and you thought about them. And we're so used to being on autopilot and doing things without thinking. And so now's our opportunity. And maybe you're not vegan full-time yet, but when you do intentionally have that plant-based meal, or choose that option, that's its own reward. That's its own fulfilling moment of reward. And that's something that actually is something that you do more and more and more as you go into your journey.
Yeah, it's being more mindful and looking at everything as an energy exchange for me. It's like what I put on my skin, consume, how I act towards people, everything is a consumption of sorts. So do I want to create a positive energy exchange or a negative one? And that like loop with whether it be a human, the nature, an animal, it's just like, it's all really important to allowing us to, I think, stay positive and fulfill our higher purpose, because we're not like in negative all the time. I want to know what being a mindful entrepreneur means to you.
So I think that there are many things, and of course we all have we all have days that are full of stress, especially actually in this moment where, you're hit with a lot of, bad news or things that are going on that are out of there's a lot that's out of our control more than ever. And how do you keep from that consuming you, and how do you keep anxiety from from consuming you? And I think that the part of the answer is building your spiritual foundation so that you can recenter yourself, so you can process that information, you can process your day and without without a negative effect to yourself, and so that actually you can be a source of strength for other people, and that's something that because you've done that work, it's needed. You can see it around you. People need that from you, and that's a really amazing gift that you can give to other people, of being that foundation, being a rock. Sometimes you need that in other people, right? And so if we can be that for each other, being a mindful entrepreneur is making sure that you are able, you put yourself in a position that spiritually, that you're able to support other people and be foundational for other people, and you will get that in return.
Yeah, it starts with you.
If you foster that in your team.
Yeah, and I do believe it starts with you, because you can't reflect that to others unless you're practicing it yourself, or else it becomes like, inauthentic in many ways, and it actually won't get you the goal you want. But
Yeah.
I also, you mentioned obviously what's happening right now, and with the economy where it is, obviously we're in the US, so I don't know how much of a different situation it is, but I mean, unemployment numbers at an all-time high, economic models being destroyed and falling apart.
Yeah.
Where do we go from here? Like, I mean, we obviously can't do what we've been doing.
No. Well, certainly, I've fairly strong beliefs on how we got here. I think all of these zoonotic diseases are all due to mistreatment of animals. All of them. Whether you look at AIDS or SARS or COVID or it's whether it's domestic or wildlife, it's all, we have to reset our relationship with nature, and also just climate change as well is going to expose more disease and pandemics as well. So we have to use this moment, and I'm glad in some ways the fact that this has been much longer than we think gives us more time to think about what we want coming out of this. What is the world that we want to exist in? And that's the reason why the free ebook came out, and why actually we did TV commercials, which said, "Nature is speaking. Are we listening?"
Oh, really? I didn't know that, because I obviously am not in Canada. But so and I'm not watching TV that much. But I think that's really interesting. And why was that important for you?
So I think it's important because I think every single person is discovering in this moment what's actually important, what's truly important to them, and how much can we cut that's overconsumption or unnecessary, that doesn't bring us anything, and that's maybe detrimental. And I think that even as close to the ideals of Age of Union as I personally try to be, when this all stopped, I learned a lot about the things that I just have been doing just out of habit, and just like rat race, traveling here, doing all sorts of things that now I realize, and in this time of reflection, it won't continue the same way, and it's not important, and so I think that personally we're experiencing a reset. I think societally, I think we're also things are going to change, hopefully, and it's an opportunity for us to step back, because it's been this exponential growth of progress for humanity, but to the detriment of the natural world and everything else on the planet. And I think that's unsustainable. And I think that we are going to be healthier, and we're going to be better off if we put that into check now.
Definitely. And we have the time to do that if we want to take the time.
We do.
And make a shift. And
you see, nature is resilient, and nature will come back if we give it a chance. And that's a really important lesson as well, that it's not too late, and and things can be turned around if we give nature a chance and we behave more respectfully.
I agree. It lives before us and after us. So actually, we need to stay humble as humans.
Less ego, more listening.
We have some questions I want to get to. Jordana, do you want to maybe lead some of this? And if anyone wants to jump on camera and turn on their audio to ask questions, we can.
Sure. Yeah, we have a question from Carrie. Carrie, I can read your question, or you can unmute yourself either way. Sounds like I can unmute you.
Yeah.
Hi.
First of all, I read your book and it was extraordinary, and it is a great model, and I'd say for entrepreneurs and all leaders in all areas.
Thank you.
That I think that it's a beautiful, beautiful premise based on those pillars. Now, I'm just very concerned about our next generation, and with this whole reset and going through COVID, I think that they're very discouraged. What advice would you have for them? Because they're not starting, they're really starting with a completely new reality.
Yeah.
As you said, the set, and I'm very concerned. I'm a teacher and an educator, and I see the anxiety in the kids about teachers. So what would you say to them?
I would say that there before them is the greatest opportunity that I think we've ever had to create the world that we should have created from the start. You know, to bring all of the great things that we've created, like as human progress, and have that be in sync and in harmony with the natural world. You know, and I think that that's the great opportunity, and that's the ultimate reunion of the beauty of what we can do with the beauty of what is here. You know, and I think that if we create it with that mindset and create the next generation of businesses, the next generation of nonprofits, the next generation of culture. Those are all opportunities. It's such fertile ground for new ideas, for new ways to succeed.
It looks like we have a question from Mark now. Mark, looks like you're unmuted. Go ahead.
Yeah. Hi, Dax.
Hi.
I happen to agree with whoever said, maybe you mentioned it, or Jordana. I think that there is a global humility that is happening.
Yeah.
Whether it endures or not.
Yeah.
That's, but I think that people are understanding and seeing how the world is changing under the calm, I'm going to call it. They're highlighting how the waters of Venice are clear, how fish are coming, just how, by contrast, how we've destroyed the opportunities for a natural balance.
Yeah.
And this is the world, my daughter likes to say the universe is talking to us, or, that somebody has that there's this balance that's hopefully going to endure. Now, my question, so I'm in agreement with what you're saying. Your company is very focused, if I'm correct, on the restaurant trade and stuff like that. I don't look at statistics the same way the news likes to go shock, because they just closed everybody up. So of course everybody's unemployed. How have you looked at helping your clients, the restaurateurs, look at their future from, I'm not saying from a financial point of view, but from a, that they can reposition themselves to survive, to move forward, and to look at
finding innovation or solutions in a time of where things are not clear. Obviously, it's uncertain.
Because that's, in a way, it's a luxury and a necessity at the same time.
So so we work with local businesses, and I think that one of the interesting things in this moment is we've accelerated time, right, in terms of like adoption of more digital channels, right? It's as if we skipped 10 years into the future, and I think we're understanding what it's like to lose our local businesses, lose our the things that make our cities and communities special, and not uniform, and not all Walmart and Amazon and Costco, you know, and or big chain restaurants. So I think that it's important for all of those businesses. It's important for us to help them adapt with all the digital tools. So that's like the premise of Lightspeed, is to make sure that they're great in store or in restaurant, but also great with e-com and delivery, and have it all be in one system. And so even though a lot of our business is focused on maybe all of the physical stuff, now they're using more of the digital tools. And I think that no business going forward is not going to choose systems in the cloud that actually help them do everything, because who knows what the tastes of consumers is going to be. Who knows? Everybody wants to be future-proof in terms of what and flexible with their model. So that's super important, and that's the digitization of all of all of the consumer businesses. Now, I think we also have a special role that we can play, because we serve local business, and I think my belief is that local business, because it's owned by people in the community, they have the greatest opportunity to be the sustainable businesses, to be the businesses that are more in touch with the values that we want for our future. And so if they have the tools to be on the same level as Amazon and Costco and Walmart through technology, then they can make the better and the more sustainable choices for our planet as well. And so it's up to us to support local business, but we also have to make sure that local business has all the technology and tools and data and so on that make them competitive. One last note on humility. The reason why on the front of the book there's a mountain on the cover of Age of Union is because there's very, very few things up until this moment that actually humble human beings. The mountains are one of the few things that we look at a mountain like Everest. I know, Shira, you were at Everest. There's very few things.
I was at the base camp.
Base camp.
Yeah.
There's so few things that we look at anymore in nature and feel in awe. And I think that this moment has really created a moment of humility, as if we're in front of a mountain where we're not in control, and where we have to understand the power of nature, and understand that we don't have all the answers, and understand that it's in our best interest to be back in sync.
Beautiful. We have a question from Benjamin. Benjamin, do you want to unmute yourself?
Yes. I have a question, and this is more so coming from a soon-to-be college graduate.
Oh, great.
You know, graduating in this kind of climate, nature has dealt me a very interesting set of cards to graduate into this world.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on how I should take it and how to approach things?
It's a great question. I know that there's going to be, if I was graduating college right now, I would be doing a lot of reading, because every day there's discussion about the new ways the new ways in which the economy is going to be reshaped. So if you can position yourself to be able to create opportunity for yourself in that context, I think that's really exciting. You could be a part of the reshaping of the world, and you can infuse it with the values that you find that you think are important. For example, sustainability, or for example, social justice, or what are the things that are important to you, and bring that to a business context, or look at companies that are doing things that are part of your value system. So I think those are things that you can explore. I would say there's so much being written about what the future is going to look like. There's a lot to absorb, and I think I don't let it discourage you that things are going to change, because change is when new things bloom. When new opportunities arise. So I think that's the moment that we're in, and there's definitely going to be a lot of there's going to be a lot of things that that are going to be possible that weren't possible before.
Thank you.
Yeah, I also feel like it will make you rethink the things that you were doing just to do them, or because of the show of it, versus like, are you willing to put in the effort and work? Because it will take time. It will be more work, possibly in spaces that we're in, or in the climate we're in, that is a challenge. So unless you really care about it, it might make you rethink it. Like, is it worth it? And so hopefully people will move into spaces that they really care about, because of how we're all going to have to approach it.
Thank you.
So we have a comment from Gabrielle. She says, how can we start a buy local revolution in the fashion industry? She says specifically in Quebec, when they're so stuck with their egos and control.
I think that every one of us is a consumer, and so we actually did this campaign when COVID happened. It was actually it coincided with the 15th anniversary of Lightspeed, and it was not the celebration we were expecting to have. But what we did is we gave employees up to $500 to buy local from our customers, or from the restaurants that use our software. And what happened was everybody, and posted, and they're still posting Lightspeed local on Instagram and on Twitter. It's 8 weeks later. And what people discovered, there was a Slack channel at the office of all the places people were finding things that they would typically buy on Amazon from our own customers. So I think that the more we show how you can buy local, what you can do, how you can proudly support local, the more you can use your own influence. And everybody has influence. Everybody has a voice, especially on social media. Proudly show that you're buying local, that you're wearing local. It goes a long way. And it not only influences other people, it also gives a lot of encouragement and hope to those local producers. I think it was a lot of pride for our employees to buy from customers. Those customers needed a bit of hope, and they needed a little bit of a boost in a really dark time. And then everybody learned about these local businesses. So I mean, it's a win-win-win, and I think it takes a little bit of initiative in order for that to just work.
And don't you think as we become more mindful consumers, we're going to be aware of where we're buying, and local will be important. We're going to want to know where things are from and how they're built, and if they are ethical.
Yeah, I think it has to become a bigger and bigger part of what's important to us. I think it's the only route to a sustainable future is us starting to think and support local.
What is a livable society? That's my question. And what is a livable city? Because that's where the majority of people are living.
Who is that? What's
Roberta? Hello, Roberta? I don't know how to write in Zoom, so I can't write the question. So what is a livable society? Because that's what I'm thinking about.
Yeah, well, it's a little bit what we're just speaking about. I believe a livable society is one where we are investing in other local people, other people that are doing great things in our communities. That I think that our communities are thoughtful, mindful of our environment, of wild places that are nearby, of wildlife and other creatures that share the space or that are adjacent. I think our society, the best of humanity, as you probably I know you read the book, Roberta, is culture. I think that's something that we can celebrate. That's our inventiveness, our creativity. That's some of the real beautiful part of humanity. So I think our cities and communities are at their best when they are celebrating that. That's music, that's food, that's art, that's all forms of culture, and that when we're supporting each other, whether it's through business or through other means. I think that's a livable society where our circles of compassion are not just us and our family, but extend to our entire community, and ultimately the things that we do are compassionate of the world community.
Yep. And you know, and being in the US, like healthcare is a human right. And we're seeing more, obviously, people building gardens right now where they can get their food, because food supply is hard to
I
get
love
when cities are shut down or states are shut down or borders.
Yes.
Then where are you getting your, you know, what you consume and live on daily? And I think we need to be able to be sustainable in our backyards. It's just like, that's
100%.
where it's at. I know, I don't know, Jordana, if you want to go, but
Yeah,
we'll go
so
Dennis.
we have, yeah, we have time for one or two more questions. And so we want to go to Dennis. And then if anyone else has a question, let us know in the chat box.
Is it okay to ask the question now?
Yeah.
Okay. I was just wondering, like, were there times when there's been kind of like a disalignment between, say, creating a business and your spirituality? And there's kind of like, I guess, disagreement between those two parts of yourselves. How do you navigate those times, or how do you get back to center? Because definitely, I know for me, like right before this, I was like in an entrepreneurship program. I was building a business, and I'm almost kind of grateful for this pause, because it kind of was like, whoa, I'm kind of like away. So how do you stay grounded or like centered?
Well, there's certainly, you know, I think that when you're running an active business that's doing lots and lots of things, like you're always going to run into ethical questions about, you know, whether it's the right decision, and you'll always, you know, or there's things that happen within the business between employees or in interactions where you're like, that doesn't really exemplify the best of what we think we should be, you know? And so I think it's important to keep those values prominently understood and prominently a part of the space of the business, so that like, for example, at Lightspeed, we just came up with 6 make it statements. It's like, make it happen, make it matter, make it human, make it together, make it data driven, and make it about the customer. And so any conversation, and they all have to be balanced. You can't have it be about one and not be balanced with the other. So whenever something comes about, we make sure that it balances with the values of the company. You know, it can't be, we can't make it happen at the expense of the customer, for example. Like, we can't make it happen for us and the customer loses. So I think it's about balancing things and making sure that your values hold true.
Well, it seems like what you're saying is creating a value system, and you've done it personally, but also for your company, becomes your ethos, the filter you put things through.
Yeah. And I think repetition, our chairman, Patrick Pichette, always says, repetition never spoils the prayer. So the repetition of your values and reminding yourself and reminding other people, it's always worthwhile.
It creates a great strong foundation. It's really important.
So nice. So I think we have a question from Ashley, and that might be our last question. But if you have something that's really pressing, go ahead and let me know in the chat box. But we'll go to Ashley if you want to unmute yourself.
Hey, Dax. Thanks for your book. I've read it twice. I'm wondering, as we move into video, and this is why I was off video, because it's so taxing on people to be on video all the time.
Yeah,
there's cognitive dissonance between all this, and we're finally just understanding what it feels like to do this for 10 hours a day. I'm wondering, in like the next phase, we're seeing VR, and that's so inaccessible to people. We're seeing channels that are driven by likes and reposts, which are also ego-driven.
Yeah.
Do you think voice, or do you think we'll come back to voice in our technology? Is there anything else that you're excited about in terms of human connection?
I think that we're going to, for sure. I think everybody's been had a lot of Zoom, had a lot of FaceTime. I agree. I think there are other channels that are going to be important. I think voice is important. I think we're going to value our physical spaces more than ever, especially when we're through this. I think gathering. That's my personal feeling, is that the digital means will continue to advance, but we will also start to really treasure and value some of those gathering places more than ever. I think it's like we're not, it's not going to be a permanent situation that we can't interact in person, you know. VR is interesting. You know, we'll see if that if that can stand in for being there physically. But I know that like I'm dying for Never Apart to reopen. You know, that's just such a celebration of an exchange of energy and creativity. And we just put up our exhibitions, but we're doing them all through VR, one by one exhibition per week, and it's cool. But I'm like, wow, I wish we could all celebrate this in person at a vernissage.
Yeah, thank you, Ashley, for your question.
Thank you.
I'm going to wrap things up. I know you mentioned the 40 Acts of Union at the end of the book, but can you share a few of those today? And, you know, and hopefully what I would say as Dax shares, each one of you who are joining in this conversation right now, think of something that resonates for you and what you can start practicing this week.
Yeah. So the Acts of Union are sort of broken into 6 sections. One's exploring a plant-based diet. So there's a couple different ways you can do that. Another one's supporting animal rights. A couple ways you can do that. Becoming a conservationist, becoming a minimalist, nourishing your body and soul, and then finally embracing your community. So it's a very, very holistic set of 40 things sort of in those categories. And I'll leave you with one. You know, and I think this is a little bit on the theme of what we were talking about quite a bit in this conversation, to buy only items that have a story and a real value. And I think that that's like something that we have had to do more of in this period is what do we really, is realize what do we really need? You know, are we buying things that, that have thought put into them? You know, there's friends of mine that just created a brand called Goodie, Gooddee, and you know, all the objects on Goodie have a story, you know, where they came from, how they were created sustainably. I think it's a great model for supporting things that have positive impact through your purchasing power. And maybe we need less things and more carefully chosen things. So that's one of the acts of union.
I love that. And that's so easy to apply to our daily lives as well, to simplify and like really think about why we need something or why we want something and where that comes from.
Exactly.
Love that. Well, thank you, Dax Dasilva, for joining this intimate conversation and around something that's really important, you know, for me, and I hope for everyone here, and so many amazing takeaways. Again, Age of Union, igniting the change maker. As this, by the way, the sun is starting to set here, kind of, as you can see, the sun changed since the beginning of this. But I encourage everyone to check out the ebook that's free right now. Take it all in. We have time to really, you know, read things right now, and to sit in the spaces that we have to really think about who we want to be and what that means for us and our communities. So I so appreciate, Dax, you being here today in the middle of this quarantine and the craziness that we're all in.
And happy Mother's Day. I see my mother on
yes, I was going to say also, yes, my mom's here.
Happy Mother's Day.
Yeah,
happy Mother's Day to all Joe Silva.
Oh, that's so cute. And if you haven't been Happy Mother's Day to your mom, please do.
Thanks, Mom.
Hi, Dax.
Oh, is that your dad?
Yeah,
I'm his dad.
Oh, my dad's here too. Look at that.
Oh, you should be proud of us. We managed to figure out Zoom.
Look, there's a first time for everything.
Yeah.
That's amazing. I love that. It's so amazing.
Yeah. You know, his mom is there, and I'm sure the daughter did that for her, but I'm proud of myself. I did it myself.
Oh, you must be so, by the way, as parents, you must be so proud of Dax.
Yeah, we're proud of Dax. And his cat, too. Where's the cat, Dax?
She's in. I got a foster kitten.
Aww.
Oh, that's so cute.
That's cute.
Yeah.
That's amazing. Well, yes, thanks again. My mom's like, I'm here too. Thanks again for your time and everything you're up to. And I'm excited to see where everything goes, including your passions around the environment and, you know, what we can all do together as a community to support each other.